There's a monument called Tower Butte. And it's about 1,200 feet high and maybe, football field on the top. You can only access it by helicopter. And we were able to create a private lunch for a lady's 50th birthday party. And she didn't know her friends were going to be there. And she was with her husband and they did a Grand Canyon tour. And he said, let's just divert over here. And we pulled around and she saw the table and she saw everyone's hands in the air and we landed. And I was fortunate enough to be in the helicopter and I looked over at her with tears coming down and the smile on her husband's face and the thumbs up. His thumb might have been 10 feet high, how psyched he was. It just, in that moment, I'm like, so impactful, right? And they'll never forget that moment for the rest of their life.
Every great travel journey begins with a question. Where to next? And how do we protect what makes it beautiful? Welcome to the Conscious Check-In, the podcast where sustainable hospitality, unforgettable travel, and bold conservation stories collide. I'm your host, Amy Wald, and this is your Conscious Check-In. Well, welcome back, everyone. This is your Conscious Check-In of the week, and we are super excited to dive into some of the world's most adventurous trips with two experts that are leading travelers on life-changing experiences with EXP Journeys. We have Kevin, Jackson, and Maxie with us today. How are you?
We're great.
Well,
Thank
and
you.
yourself?
I am doing great. I'm excited to dive into some of the most adventurous travel that's happening right now, how you curate it, and how you came to lead people on really, like I said before, life-changing journeys. So I would love to hear from both of you how this all came about.
Well, I'm happy to, and thanks for having us, Amy. This is really, an honor and a privilege for both of us to be able to share what we love to do. So thank you again for the opportunity. I might be able to shed some light on how this all came about, mainly because we started it back in essentially '07, and it's taken a lot of twists and turns, but I could not be more proud of where we are in this current state with our team. This all came about mainly because of an idea that I had when I was hiking the John Muir Trail with my parents back in 2005. Wanted to show people what adventure can do for your psyche, your physical nature, the connection you have with the people that are on the trip with you, and just the feeling of elation that I personally had at the end of that trip. And it doesn't need to be physically demanding. It just needs to be a shared experience. And I think that is in the end what we wanted to create. And then over the time, I've spent some time in Australia, wrote a business plan, muddled my way through what I didn't know. And here we are 16 years later with some of the best guides, in my opinion, on the planet. So we're very fortunate to be where we are. And it kind of all started from a hike with my parents.
Which I feel like that's, inspiration. That's when you find it, right? It's like on those walks by yourself, on that vacation, when you're really unplugged and you're like, I got to do this, or I need to start thinking about doing this.
Absolutely.
So Maxie, was the kind of the same trajectory for you, or was there one single moment?
No, I think it was a completely different trajectory that ultimately, Kevin and I landed in the same spot. But in 2007, when Kevin was on that trek on the John Muir Trail, I was in my second year of law school and, questioning my decisions to go that route. And I questioned those decisions like for the next 10 years as I practiced law and just kind of hated that aspect of my professional life and always knew that I wanted to do something different, but I didn't know exactly what that was. And it was just being out in the mountains, exploring and making connections with people and, taking use on backpacking trips in spare time when, I wasn't working. That led me to taking adults on backpacking trips that, led me to finding EXP Journeys about 4 years ago, and working with Kevin together ever since has really been a life-changing experience for me. So, no, I appreciate that Kevin and I came from very different places, but, we have now found ourselves together and, helping to create and shape the, future of adventure luxury travel.
And what a perfect time. I mean, I know obviously you've had success up to today, but I feel like we are at just like this explosion of people really wanting to take life altering trips, trips that have always been on a bucket list that are becoming more of a priority, especially after, the pandemic. It's like people realize how important time is and doing those things that you've had on that to-do list or, in the back of your mind for so long. Okay, so take us through, you've built this business around taking people into places that they wouldn't normally see. Is there one really jaw-dropping or transformative moment that you've witnessed a guest, have on one of these journeys?
And Maxie, I can take from my angle here, and then you could jump in. I'm sure you've seen equally as many, but you know, there's so many, but there's a few. And Maxie and I actually have this kind of ongoing journal, we'll call it, of trips that have moments that maybe bring people to tears. And I think those are those times when you've really connected with the people in the place. And there was one in particular. It was one of the first times we'd ever done this, and it's just outside of Lake Powell. There's a monument called Tower Butte. It's about 1,200 feet high and maybe, football field on the top. You can only access it by helicopter. And we were able to create a private lunch for a lady's 50th birthday party, and she didn't know her friends were going to be there. And she was with her husband, and they did a Grand Canyon tour, and he said, let's just divert over here. And we pulled around, and she saw the table, and she saw everyone's hands in the air, and we landed. And I was fortunate enough to be in the helicopter, and I looked over at her with tears coming down and the smile on her husband's face and the thumbs up. His thumb might have been 10 feet high, how psyched he was. It just, in that moment, I'm like, so impactful, right? And they'll never forget that moment for the rest of their life. And, that was just one example that I'll never forget, because I feel like all of the planning and the time and the connection, the husband said, what can we do? And just all of those bits came together in that perfect moment. That was one that I had.
That's special. What about you,
Yeah.
Maxie?
Awesome. Well, since Kevin took the Tower Butte story, which is an incredible one, I'll move just slightly west outside of Zion National Park. A couple of years ago, I was guiding a tri-generational family, everybody from grandparents to grandkids. And one of the activities we had scheduled for their week-long adventure around Zion was canyoneering. And the grandmother of the group, she was in her late 60s, and we knew going into the trip that she had some, dementia that was starting to set in. So we were having, a bit of forgetfulness and confusion, at times. We all got out for that canyoneering. We're all getting up to go, and, we make the hike in, and we get to that first rappel, and grandma just kind of gets to the edge of the cliff, and, she just looks over at it. She's like, I can't do it. And she kind of comes to us and the family and the guides, and she's like, I think I should just bail out on this activity. Let my family go ahead. This one's not for me. And so we started working, on the plan B to hike her out and split off a guide. But while we were waiting for that plan B, to kind of come to fruition and be ready, the other guides kind of gathered around grandma and, was like, hey, well, let's, at least while we're waiting, let's, we could show you the harness that you would use. And so we got her to try on the harness, and, it's like, we're just kind of explaining how that works. And it's like, okay. And so we can, kind of show you how the rope mechanism would work. And, so kind of like get her the rope, and kind of got her get up with the rope. And they're like, okay, let's just go take one more look at the rappel, and like, cause that's where your family's going to go. And then you'll make a hike out. She's okay. So she went over there. So now we've got her like with a harness on, roped up right there at the edge of the rappel. And, her family's all gathered around her. They're, ready to begin their rappel and continue their canyoneering adventure. And, the guides were like, okay, all right, so we're going to take all this off of you now so that you can hike out. And she was like, well, I'm right here. Like, and you're like, yeah, I mean, you're ready to go. And her son came up to her, and we had a dual rope system there where they, multiple people could canyoneer or rappel down at the same time. And her son came up to her and is like, Mama, I'll go down beside you, if you want to go. And she went, and she did the whole entire canyoneering experience with her family, and it was just magical. And like, Kevin referenced earlier with the Trail of Tears, there were definitely, some tears shed throughout that. And later that night at dinner, her husband, the grandfather of the group, came up to the guides, and he was just kind of overwhelmed with emotion. He told us that he saw a part of his wife out there that day. that he had not seen in a while. And I think that was the most magical moment, was like, with her dementia setting in and her old age and that confusion, she found a part of herself out there, on those sandstone cliffs outside of Zion that, maybe she had forgotten or lost touch with. And I think, would not have been possible without the, family there, but the guides as well. So
Oh, that's super cool. I mean, and it's really speaks to the fact that these aren't just celebratory moments or, birthdays or occasions. These can be breakthroughs, getting in touch with more, that autonomous side of yourself that maybe you lost as things get scary in life. Really super powerful. I wasn't expecting that at all. That is so cool to be a part of. So we are definitely creating aha moments. And so was there one that, really spoke to you more significantly than another that you were like, this is what I have to do, or, it helps you curate new ideas as you're going through?
I think, what's amazing for me, at least on every trip, I feel like there's an aha moment almost on every trip. And every trip builds on itself. So when I look back at the trips that we were doing in 2013, 2014, 2015, I'm almost embarrassed at the way we operated them as to what we're doing now. It just keeps getting better. And, the story that Maxie told and the ones that, some of the experiences that I've been on, it's such an iterative process of improvement. And I think the team collective wants it to be so much better. So the aha moment is every trip, in my opinion. And you just say, okay, for example, we were just in Jackson Hole and there were so many aha moments, and all the pieces that we pulled out of that, like the junior ranger program and the scavenger hunt around town, like those now become infused into our culture and our design process that we then apply to future trips. And that happens across the board. So I guess the long answer is every trip has the opportunity for that, but all trips collectively make them progressively better and better and better. So I can't wait to see what it looks like in a couple of years. It'll just
I
be
bet.
a whole nother world of travel that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys are literally, I mean, carving out a new way to travel,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, it seems to be. Okay. So, Maxie, aha.
Yeah. So kind of similar to what Kevin said, but slightly different. My aha moment actually came in 2017 when I was still like practicing law, but I was taking time off and taking kids on backpacking trips in wilderness areas. And at the end of one of those backpacking trips, I had a student came up to me and gave me a big hug, and he said, Mr. Johnson, this was the best week of my life. And, I never, like as an attorney, I never had clients tell me that anything I did was, involved with the best week of their life. But I had this teenager in this wilderness area, like tell me that. And so similar to what Kevin said, that aha moment continues because now, almost a decade later, I have clients that come up to me and say, Maxie, this is the best week of our life. And they're still in a wilderness area. They're still in a remote location that my co-guides and I have taken them to. But, they also are not like, necessarily on a backpacking trip, although they may be, but they may have gotten to that wilderness area, via helicopter, and they may be staying, at a nice luxury resort or one of our, camps there set in a national forest. And so just that's, that aha moment kind of continues for me. And I think for the client's person, it's like, not only are they having the best week of their life, but I'm having the best week of my life over and over and over again, like Groundhog Day style.
Yeah, I'm jealous. I mean, I think anybody that loves to travel is like, I want this job. Which
Yeah.
makes me think of a question I wasn't going to ask, but you hit on it, Maxie. Okay, so you were a lawyer before. What kind of lawyer were you? We got to know all the ins and outs.
I tried a little bit of everything, trying
Okay.
to find one that fits, but mostly personal injury and criminal defense.
Okay. So what would you say to somebody then, or maybe even somebody that's like, oh my gosh, this is my dream job, but how do I even think about going down this road? How would you inspire or advise someone maybe that wants to leave a career or that just knows this is the career for them to kind of start down this journey?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Amy, and one that I've given considerable thought to. And to start off my answer to that, I would tell them that, or ask them if they've heard the phrase of find a job that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And if they're familiar with that phrase, I would tell them of another phrase that they may have not heard, which is be careful working a job doing something that you love, because you may suck all the love right out of it. And I have seen that so much in the guide world, and people that like, oh, I love backpacking, I love hiking, I love kayaking, things like that. I want to do that for a living. Big difference between doing those things on your own personal time for yourself and delivering high-level exclusive experiences for other people that's doing it. Having a love for being in the outdoors and doing active things is very different from guiding in the outdoors and, creating those. So I think that's the first step, is just having that honest experience, talk and conversation with yourself. Like, do I really want to do this for others and not for myself? And I think that's what really elevates, EXP, is that with everyone, the co-guides that I work with a former textile manager, I work with a former Wall Street banker, I work with a former judge. Everyone that, is on the EXP team is there because they want to be, and they want to deliver those experiences for others. And I think that's why EXP has such a high retention rate, as opposed to what you see in most of the rest of the guide world, is like the attrition rate is, horrendous. Like, you're needing to hire new staff every year. Whereas here at EXP, Kevin and I just guided, with a couple of gentlemen last week in Jackson that have been with the company for, over 10 years. So I think that's the first step, Amy, is you've really got to make that critical, like, have that hard conversation with yourself and realize, like, this is a job and it's a lot of work and it's early mornings and late nights. And if you're just doing it because you love being outdoors and you love hiking or, mountain biking or what, it's not going to last.
Great advice and some food for thought for, I'm sure, people that are tuning in and gonna listen to this. Okay, so let's take a little bit of a fun jaunt. I am an enormous animal lover, and why I do what I do is because I want everyone to be inspired to want to protect nature and, of course, the beautiful animals and wildlife that we have. So I always love to ask, if you had to choose one animal that would best represent maybe you, maybe how you take your guides, whether it's instincts, resilience, the way they see the landscape, is there one animal that stands out to you and why?
You want me to go first, Maxie?
Yeah, go for it, Kevin. I hope you don't steal it.
I hope I don't steal it. No, look, I've thought about this, and I personally, the bald eagle for me is the ultimate animal. I think for my current role, having a higher level view, being able to see what's going on, but also when I need to be in the mix and getting involved, I love to, and hopefully there's impact there. Very loyal animal, family oriented. And I think I think the bald eagle just represents the type of guide that I want to be. And I just love the animal. I saw tons of them last week in Jackson. I'm just, every time, but no matter, like, sometimes if I'm driving, I have to like stop and just look up because they're just incredible. So that's my animal.
I love it. I wasn't expecting that, but it makes a lot of sense. I actually I don't know if you know Rob Holmes. He is from GLP Films. He creates these incredible films all over the world about destinations and culture and sustainable stewardship. And he said the falcon for very similar reasons. So that makes sense.
Cool.
Okay. All right, Maxie, what's yours?
All right. So neither one of you stole it from the eagle or the falcon. So mine's going to be the duck. And I know, right? The duck.
I love it, though.
If you hear me out. So a couple of reasons for the duck. In the EXP logo, we have incorporated elements of both the water, the wind, and the land. And that's like, the duck does all of those. The duck can swim on the water, just like I take people on the water on Lake Powell. The duck can walk on the land, just like I take people walking through the hoodoos at Bryce Canyon. Or the duck can fly, just like my clients and I will, be in a helicopter flying over one of the 7, natural wonders of the world that is the Grand Canyon. So the duck can do it all. EXP Journeys, we do it all, water, land, sky, it's all there for us. And then the other thing with the duck that I love so much is when you see a duck, out on the lake, out on the pond, and it's just floating along so calm and serene. That's what an EXP guide looks like when they're working. We're cool, we're calm, everything's fine. But what you don't see with that duck and what you don't see with that EXP guide are those legs, like, furiously paddling underneath the surface of the water to keep that duck moving. And I think that's a perfect analogy to an EXP guide. Just like our clients see it, everything's fine in the morning, good morning, everything like that. It's all smooth throughout the day. But they don't see that furious paddling, that happens, with those early mornings and those late nights and with the rest of the team to make sure, that everything does go as smooth as it can be. So
Great
yeah,
answer. I
Good
love
one,
that.
man.
But you did miss one thing about the duck. The duck
what's
is
that?
it's really cute.
Yeah.
I love a duck. I mean, it's just an adorable little animal or bird, a fowl, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I'm sure that gives the listeners some insight into really how how protective you are of what you do from both of those angles, honestly, and how much care you take. So let's move into, what does that ideal traveler look like that really is the perfect fit for your incredible offerings? Who comes on your trips? Families, couples, solo travelers, who is really going to thrive in the environment that you create for them?
I can start, but I think, we do have a wide variety of demographics, but I do think that the young family is the ones that I have seen kind of gain the most, connect the best, and really just have those shared experiences that maybe they didn't even think they would have, right? Like the kids that, one of our mantras is we want our clients' kids to then share these experiences with their kids. So it's generational. And I think it starts with the kids. And a lot of what I love is seeing the kids connect to people and place and learn through experience. And so I would say the young family is probably our primary demographic amongst others, but that would be the
Okay.
primary. Yeah.
Maxie,
Yeah.
do you have a
And
contrarian view?
no, I have a complimentary view, I think. So, like as Kevin mentioned, those small families, and the legacy brand to continue those trips. I think that's very much the demographic that I would shift it a little bit and say if we're just going to go and look a bit more internally on those groups. The travelers that get the most out of an EXP Journeys experience are those that are actually looking for that connection to flow both ways. Like they're not just wanting to see amazing sights and do amazing things, but they're also wanting to perhaps learn more about the culture and the land where they're visiting and maybe even get involved a little bit, with having that flow both ways, that they're taking the time to maybe learn about the Navajo hoot dancer that's performing, at their evening, sundowner, or maybe they're taking a little bit more time to learn about the founders, of the Teton Raptor Center in Jackson that we're affiliated with, things like that. People that are, they're open to everything that we as EXP Journeys can show them and offer them, but they also feel like they have a little bit of something that they could give back to that area and those people where they visit. I feel like that kind of traveler is going to get the most elevated experience that we can offer because they do feel at the end of those trips, they're now more an integral part of that ecosystem or that area that they visited, that they didn't just take, but they gave a little bit as well and helped cement, that connection.
That makes so much sense. And I think that that's where that element of sustainability, conservation, regenerative, whatever buzzword, even though they're not necessarily buzzwords, but whatever word you want to use, that it's really about can you give back to who or what or where you're visiting and not just, really extract from it. So
Yeah.
such a great thing to think about as you are traveling through the world. And so if somebody's listening right now and they're like, okay, that's it. I'm going to the website right now. I am booking a trip with these guys. This is for me. What would you say to them? Anything they need to think about or, just ponder really?
I mean, I think for when they reach out, it's honestly, we're here to listen and learn about what they want. Like, we're not trying to ever dictate someone's trip. We're here to help shape their idea of the perfect trip and use our knowledge and our experience. But it's certainly a collaborative effort. And I think when the guests come to us open and saying, here's what I'm thinking, oftentimes we'll get a call and say, I want to go to the Grand Canyon. And in the end, the trip involves, Zion and Bryce and Lake Powell and, Vermilion Cliffs and like all the pieces. But the impetus for the trip was the Grand Canyon. But when you actually share what else is around there, it becomes a much greater, trip experience, all the lot. And I think when the guests do come, reach out, having them come to us curious about what they want will allow us to give a much deeper and meaningful trip for them, because nothing is off the shelf. It's all custom. It's all designed specifically to their want and need and interest.
So really every trip is unique,
Yeah,
right? No
we like to
trip looks
say
looks the same.
we've never done the same trip twice. Obviously, we have a huge, box of puzzle pieces that we utilize, but we've never put them together the exact same way ever. And that's partly the fun for us too, because if it was the same repetitive thing, I think we strive on innovation and
Mhm.
continuing to try to find what is the next cool thing. How can we stay ahead of the curve? And oftentimes that comes from the guest's request. Could you do this? Let's figure it out together. And to us, that's fun. That's different. And yeah, it's special.
Absolutely. So, all right. So let's talk about, what and I know that we've peppered this through, but let's talk about some real tactical, practical reasons why someone could be saying to themselves, I can take myself to Yosemite. I can go, you know, find, this incredible bucket list trip into, I don't know, Nemo Bay
Hmm.
or Alaska or all over the world, right? And what do they miss out on? Or what are they not able to really capture when they're doing it themselves versus having you both and experts take them through these journeys?
You want to step into that one, Maxie, or you want me to take it?
I mean, yeah, I mean, other than my incredible nature-based dad jokes that they're going to miss out on, and they're
Yes.
not going to have that. I mean, I
Hold
think
on a
one of the
minute. So give us one then.
didn't put me on the
Oh,
spot.
now he's got to
All
say
right,
it.
all
All
right.
right, all right,
You
no,
think of
that's
one.
fine, that's
I'm
fine.
sure
All
he's
right,
got
all right.
one. He's got one.
Ooh,
I think you've got a book in your back pocket. You're like,
Exactly.
hold on a minute.
hands free. What did the buffalo say when it dropped its child off at school?
Oh, I don't know. What did the buffalo say?
Bye, son.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
We will have some special effects there for sure. Sorry to interrupt you. Okay.
No, that's fine. So, other than the repository of those nature-based dad jokes, I think that with that, and Amy, I certainly get that. When I started, in this, line of work, I said the same thing. Like, why would I ever pay that much money to go on a trip when I could just do it myself? And I think there are a few things that come to me as an answer for that. Is one, as a traveler with EXP Journeys, you can just turn your mind off. You
Mhm.
can't do that when you're doing it yourself. You've got to be worried about what time do I need to leave? Where do I need to park? What's the best restaurant to eat at? What time do I need to be in line? And with EXP and having a guide there, we'll just tell you. The other thing is the flexibility, like Kevin mentioned earlier, like when you make that initial call, like, it's completely custom. Whatever trip that you want, we will design for you. But that extends to being on the trip. You would be riding along in the car and, just be like, hey, could we possibly go helicopter tomorrow in addition to that canyoneering? And you've got a guide there that already, has thought about all the plan Bs and the plan Cs for the next day. What can we do to elevate this? And so instead of you having to get on the phone or get on the computer and call these vendors and things, that guide has established relationships and has probably thought all through this already. And it's just so much quicker and convenient. And I think finally, and this one is somewhat overlooked, but just like having a driver, I think is huge for
Mhm.
people in that you don't have to deal with the traffic of getting into Yellowstone National Park. You don't have to deal with driving a van around a tight parking lot. You can just relax in, the back seat, with your spouse, with your kids. So much of that, is just kind of taken for granted. And I think people that self drive their own vacations, while it's certainly possible, it adds a lot of stress. But just knowing that, like, that's one less thing that's off of your plate and you can just relax and enjoy your trip. You can look out the windows, enjoy the scenery that's passing by, and just know that somebody else that drives those sort of vehicles in those environments all the time is taking care of that. And you can just relax and enjoy the time with your friends and family.
So what I hear you're saying is this is like white glove, Rolodex, just right way to explore nature, which usually you don't think of those things going hand in hand, but nature is such a luxury. Being able to see some of these places is such a luxury. So to have people, like you said, on the fly, knowing what plan B is or knowing how to even get you into those like once in a lifetime experiences
Mhm.
is wow, such a gift. I'm
Yeah.
booking a trip. I
Should.
am booking a trip.
Do it.
So that's really kind of like I was gonna ask about those backstage accesses that you afford people, and that's kind of what we're talking about now, right? Those things that maybe aren't advertised and you have built relationships with. Is there one example of that that you could give us?
I can take this one, Maxie, if that's cool. I think there's, yeah, just piggybacking off of what Maxie said, specifically with the relationships, because a lot of our team are consistently here year over year. We we're not just a phone call away. We're in person with a lot of the vendors. We
Mhm.
talk to them. We know them intimately. They're friends of ours. Like when we're out there, you're not just seeing them for the first time. We've been visiting these folks for years. And those relationships start to develop into special access, unique experiences.
Mhm.
For example, you know, over time we visit Monument Valley and we're very close. Part of our foundation is donating back to the Navajo Relief Fund, and we're very proud of the work we've done and the people that we get to support. We get to introduce our guests to people like Peter MacDonald, who is the president of the Navajo Nation. He was the one of the last living Navajo code talkers, so he gets to tell. He's like a true Forrest Gump, and you're sitting there living history, talking with this gentleman. You can't Google Peter MacDonald and come and say, "Can I just," he's obviously online, but again, he's not somebody you just call up and go to dinner with. So those are just, or one, we had a request for someone's 18th birthday. All he wanted to do was find dinosaur bones. Like, okay, that's a great idea. I love it. How do we make that work? We work very closely with, the Escalante partners, and we were able to go out into a place called the Kaipirowitz area. And this kid, for his 18th birthday, was able to uncover a dinosaur fossil of a new species of dinosaur that had never been found before. I was uncovered the skull, and even the paleontologist was like, "My God, this is awesome!" Like he was so
Wow.
cool. Like this kid's gonna be over the moon. And he was. And like those things don't happen unless you have the relationship and you're on the ground frequently enough to be able to ask the questions of how can we make this different. And those are just the things that, because we are there, we can make those things happen. And we love making them happen. Like it's the fun part for us, for sure.
I feel like the opposite happens. You try to plan average traveler or someone who's not an expert tries to
Mhm.
plan something like this, everything goes wrong, and then you ruin literally, like, right, you ruin your whole vacation because you're like, why didn't I have somebody help me or guide me through there? So
Mhm.
let's talk about the conservation aspect and sustainability for a little bit, not just about changing the traveler, but how does, for instance, a tribal, a First Nations or a certain culture or group of people, how does then that help uplift their communities? There are many groups that have been exploited for a long time. How does that change their view then of how they want to interact with tourists and groups like yourself?
Kevin, I think I can speak to that one
Please.
particularly.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Amy, one of the most special things that we do at EXP Journeys for our travelers is we will have either we have a Navajo guide that we work closely with in that Lake Powell Zion area. And that guide does a couple of special experiences for us. One, he guides slot canyon tours near Antelope Canyon. Anyone that's familiar with travel, like in Utah and Arizona, may have heard of Antelope Canyon. It's the most photographed slot canyon in the world. But with the EXP Journeys and our partnership with Joseph, the Navajo gentleman that I referenced earlier, is Joseph, since he is Navajo, has access to quite a plethora of other canyons that are just as magical and is just as spectacular as Antelope, but without the crowds. And so he can take small groups into those canyons, and he will tell his stories about growing up there on the reservation and, point out the animals and things. And then often at the end of the tour, he will pull out a Native American flute and play, a small private concert for the group that's there.
Wow.
And he gets to share those stories. And I think that's so important in keeping that culture alive that was suppressed and, almost wiped off the face of, the continent there at one point. That he can tell those stories. And if he gets to, in our season, he tells that story 8, 10, 12 times a year. That helps keep his culture alive because those individuals, those clients, they remember that. They remember those stories that Joseph tells.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that Joseph will do for us is we'll gather the families and the groups, around sunset time out there in the desert. And Joseph will put on his hoop dancing ceremony. Joseph is an award-winning hoop dancer, is currently ranked like fourth, number 4 in the world. He puts on an amazing show, but he talks about how hoop dancing was taken from the Native Americans, how the U.S. federal government prohibited that practice for so many years. And then Joseph brings out his son, 8-year-old Jaden, and Jaden will perform hoop dancing there alongside his father. And I'll have family groups like where dad and son are sitting beside each other, watching father and son perform. And I think it's just so important that like Jaden is part of that young Navajo culture, that he is learning and practicing that ceremony that for so many years was, prohibited, and to keep that alive. And that Joseph, has a way of not only keeping that culture and that ceremony alive and thriving, but he can make a living doing it. And so I think that's just such a special thing that EXP provides, that in that we give him a means of his livelihood and he gets to practice that ancient culture.
And I think about for a little person, 8 years old, right? Whether you are the one sharing your culture or somebody watching it, it changes your view um, of the world so much because you either feel accepted and seen and proud, or now you're thinking, I'm not the only one on the universe. And,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
life should be, you know, everyone should have the same opportunities and be able to, just thrive in the world. So just wow, what and I think about conservation. Conservation isn't just about nature. Conservation is about culture and people
Definitely.
as well. So I think, you're teaching your travelers a lot in addition to giving them incredible memories.
Mm.
So the future of adventure travel, I mean, that's a buzzword right now, right? Adventure traveler or travel, excuse me, has continued to become more and more popular. But what do you see coming next? As experiential design and adventure travel grows more and more popular?
What's interesting, and I was reading some feedback from some trips recently, and I think what people are clamoring for is exclusivity, privacy, and feeling this sense of remoteness and being by themselves. And that's a really hard thing to come by these days, particularly here in the US. And, I haven't done much travel overseas, but I've heard places in Europe are becoming over traveled, they're saying. And I think just we had a request last year, and the only brief was, I don't want to see another person other than my friends and the staff for 4 days. Like that was all they asked for. And we were able to deliver that. But there is that sense of like adventure may not be physical. It might just be remote and like feeling this privacy and exclusivity. And I think that is going to become more prevalent over time, that people just need that escape from humanity and just try to be with themselves, their family, their friends. So that's what I'm seeing more and more.
It makes sense.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So, touching back on sustainability a little bit, you talk about all the partners you have. Like, it would be impossible for you guys to curate and create these incredible journeys without a huge network.
Mhm.
But when you are doing that, what does that look like when you think about sustainability? I mean, we talked about the Navajo element and different
Mhm.
cultures, but what does that look like from, like a hotel accommodation or another tour provider? How do you vet them, and how do you decide who's the right partner for you in that regard?
That's a great question. And I think we really had no framework going into this type of, this question. Honestly, I would have no idea what to say 4 years ago before we started down the B Corp trajectory. And what I found that the B Corp provided was just a really good understanding of what to look for, what questions to ask, how to be more responsible in our selection process. And to be fair, sometimes there is only a option, right? And and,
Sure.
and we'll go with that. We're not going to say every hotel we go to is, 100% eco-friendly, but we do our best to source locally. Food. We have our own product, which is a luxury tented camp, which operates almost on a leave no trace basis, which means that camp is built, and when that camp is broken down, if you were to go to that site, you wouldn't even know there were 6 massive canvas tents and a dining tent and a cook shack and a common space for the clients. And so we're proud of those products that we've been able to create, and also the partnerships with the local communities that we're able to work with on a regular basis. I think what I've noticed is more and more of the hotels we work with are considering, just small example, but the aluminum water bottles that we had from a hotel last week, 2 years ago, those were plastic. And
Yeah.
now they're aluminum. And more properties, we're seeing that become the norm versus the, kind of the exception to the rule. And I think there is this kind of undercurrent, particularly in the domestic market, where people are being more mindful of the environment, working with local communities and cultures. I think that's been done overseas for quite some time, but domestically, I think it's still relatively new, but we're making progress. So that's what I'm seeing. Maxie may have, he spent a little bit more time in the field than I this year, but it was just good to see that, particularly the water bottles. Like, that's something I notice every time at every property, and almost the last 3 places I've been to on trip all had aluminum water bottles, which I like.
And I think the interesting part is too, you're in a market in these natural, beautiful places where that audience is very privy to that. So, the advantage is the hotels are like, we can't, this is completely goes against the grain of the values of our ideal client or our traveler that we're targeting. So that helps.
Hmm.
Those national parks, I mean, if you are an avid outdoorsman, you're not really probably carrying around a water bottle. So, goes hand in hand, or, a
Yes.
plastic water bottle.
The
I mean, things
plastic
happen,
bottle.
right?
A Yeti, maybe.
Sustainability is a journey by,
Yeah.
you know, but so Maxie, will you talk to us a little bit about B Corp? So you mentioned it, Kevin, but for maybe some of the listeners that don't know what B Corp is, what is the advantage for a traveler that's going to book with you? What kind of confidence, even further, will they get from you because of that B Corp association?
I think that the word that you use, the confidence there, is well placed in that just with the B Corp certification. And, your listeners are probably familiar with, B Corps like Tom's Shoes is a B Corp, or Patagonia, but they have a confidence of knowing that the money, the finances that they are paying this company are going to an organization that considers things other than their bottom line in their business decision making. And that's really the whole gist of the B Corp, and it's awesome. Kevin and I were super excited when we, got approved, and now we can put that logo on our website and on our marketing materials and everything else. But it's not anything, that is driven by increasing our bottom line. The whole focus of that B Corp is that we made a legal change in our governing documents where we're going to consider all of our shareholders is the language that B Corps use. And our shareholders, those are our clients, those are our employees, but they're also the areas where we operate. They're the national parks, the national forests, the BLM land where we conduct our activities. Our shareholders are the that live in those places. They're the environment. So that we're considering all of that. And this comes full circle to what Kevin talked about earlier with us being a legacy provider and conducting trips that parents want their kids to take their kids on. If we don't do this, in a more dramatic worst case scenario, there not going to be as many of these beautiful, amazing places for those kids to take their kids on. So by making this commitment, we are taking that stand, and so that people that travel with us can feel better that their money and their time is going to a company that wants to provide them with the highest level of experience as possible, but also wants to protect and maintain that so that future generations can as well. That we're playing the long game with this B Corp certification. This is not, about that fancy logo, as cool and awesome as it is. This is not about that press release that, puts us out there, gives us another talking point. This is about making solid, sustainable choices that will continue to drive this long after Kevin and I are out of this game and somebody else has taken over the reins.
Very, very well said. And by the way, if you're going for a fancy logo and a PR, push, it takes a lot of work to get to those two things with B Corp. That is not an easy,
Yeah.
like one and done. The listeners can understand that that is a true commitment. That takes a lot of time and preparation and, research and all of that.
But it was also just
I'm
on
sorry,
that
go
real
ahead.
quick, it was also
Yeah.
great, like, we learned as much about ourselves and the process. Whether we had the logo or not, Maxie and I talked about it, it's irrelevant. Like, what we were able to, create in terms of the structure of the business, the people we interacted with, like, to me, it was just such a cool framework to be able to follow and learn and I guess be better as an organization. And yes, the logo is the cherry on top. That's all fancy and nice, but it wasn't that wasn't the journey is what it's about, right? It's not about the end result. And look, every year we got to do better. It's not about we're not there yet. It's a journey, not an end line. So yeah, I just
And
wanted
there's
to add
checks and balances along the way,
that.
right?
Totally.
It's not like a one and done, like you're saying. And I would bet that kind of, as you were going along, it helped you build your business model even better and in more alignment with, what your vision and your values
Yep.
are.
Yep.
That would be my guess.
And
So,
yeah, yes. And we also,
yeah,
because of it, we started the EXP Foundation, and that's how we have our three pillars, which are the Water, Land, and Sky, the Turner Foundation, Navajo Relief, and the Raptor Center. So, like, we never didn't even think about how to even come about, but those were big pieces of our B Corp journey, and we couldn't be happier about the connections that we're making. So, yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. All right. So, as we're wrapping up, let's talk about, which is probably a really hard question to answer, but if you could design the ultimate dream trip, no limits, maybe that'll help a little
Sure.
bit, or maybe not with you two because you can do anything. You can go anywhere, but what would that trip be?
Well, so this idea that I've always thought would be really fun would be to just, for a client that have traveled with us before that trust you, all I would do is mail them a GPS coordinate and they have to meet us there. And then from that point forward, they're continuing on a journey. They don't even know what's happening, but it's kind of building on itself, taking bits of every information they've told us. Hey, I want to learn more about this. I'd love to visit here. And it's something that like it's a true surprise is hard to come by these days. And so like creating that for them, wherever that might be, to me would be a lot of fun. And also to watch them relive and, whether it's introducing different people in their life over time or having a storyline around it. Some people are really keen on like a James Bond. They want to live like this character life. Yes, like that I think, but like the element of surprise to me would be the ultimate trip design that I would love to do. So that's mine.
Yeah, like pick your GPS coordinates out of a hat. You don't know what
Yes,
you're gonna get. Oh my gosh, I
no idea.
love that.
Yep.
So cool. All right, I know you've got one up your sleeve, Maxie.
I do. So
Shocker.
I live in Las Vegas, and I'm like the Colorado River is like 40 minutes that way, and so my trip would focus on the Colorado River. The Colorado River is the lifeblood of the West, and so I would love like clients just fly into Vegas where I live, and I'll pick you up at the airport, and we have so the best restaurants in the world here. We have the best entertainment in the world here, but we also have some of the most amazing features of the Southwest right here as well. So, after you've gotten your fill of Vegas, I would love for us to kind of trace and follow that Colorado River, and we can, continue the EXP journeys, with the land, the water, and the sky. And we'll do that by kayaking, whitewater rafting on the Colorado River.
Oh.
Maybe we'll go up, check out Zion and see on the Narrows, where a tributary of the Colorado River has formed an amazing canyon. We'll take to the air with a helicopter flight over the Grand Canyon, maybe hike there as well. And, from there we can go to Lake Powell, also formed, by that Colorado River, houseboat capital of the world. I feel like with this journey, starting in Vegas and just kind of following that river up as far as they want, that we'll get that land, water, and sky, but that we can also, like with that duck, we can get out, we can hike, we can see some amazing things, we can take to the air and witness, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world from the sky, get a bird's eye view, and then we can also play on the water, whether it be the river or the lake. Such an amazing experience, and you can book in that whole entire wild Colorado River experience, with a stay in Las Vegas and maybe end it, at one of the Amman properties outside of Lake Powell. So really kind of a combination of wild places, luxury settings, and that water, that land, and that sky as well.
Totally resonate with that though, because you get a little bit of that city,
Mhm.
fast paced,
Mm.
and then you go totally wild and engorge yourself in nature. I don't know. I'm picturing in the future. I'll let you guys have this, but design a trip based on an animal. I don't know. I'm feeling it.
Now we're
I'm
talking. That
feeling
is
it.
Nice.
What animal do you want to be on your trip?
that's
Yeah.
good. I like it, Amy.
I
You
like
got
it.
a
I'm gonna check
career in
back. I
this.
might need copyright
Yes.
right to that.
Yes, we'll have like mountain lion trips and grizzly bear trips,
Yes.
eagle trips,
Yes. Duck trips.
duck trips. That's
Well,
right.
Cool.
tell the audience where they can find both of you, follow along to learn about what's going on, and then when they're ready to get on a call with you, how can they do that?
They can follow us on our Instagram. I think it's at EXP Journeys. Our website is expjourneys.com. And honestly, the best way to reach us is just call our office line or reach out via the web, and we'll give you a call right back. And if they're interested, we'd love to speak to people. We love talking to people, whether they book a trip with us or not. We just love talking about the places we love to visit with people. We're happy to talk to anybody about the places they want to visit, why they want to go. It just makes, it makes it fun for us. So you can reach us on any of those means, and or email trips at EXP Journeys is another way to get a hold of us, but there's lots of ways. Yeah, that would be probably 3
And we'll make
easiest.
sure to put those in the show notes so
Cool.
people can get
Great.
to you as quick as possible and
Great.
start picking your brain about what their dream trip looks like.
Love it.
This has been so fun. Thank you very much for sharing your world with us, sharing how you're taking care of our world, and planning these incredible vacations for people that last a lifetime of memories.
Thank you, Amy. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you
Well,
for taking the
everyone,
time.
thank you again. This has been your weekly conscious check-in, and we will see you next time. That was your Conscious Check-In. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and let us know who you'd love to hear from next. Until next time, travel deeper and stay inspired.